It was called Tech for Good, which is the same title of this session we're doing now. And Niklas, okay. Excellent. Everybody sit down. Actually, let me sit. I'll sit at the end there. Okay, I'm going to do this myself, just because I want to sit down for once. And so we've got an amazing group here. Niklas Zennström, who is currently known as the founder and, I guess, managing director of ATOMICO, but will be remembered forever as the co-founder of Skype. Next to him, hey, everybody, a big cheer for everybody who's used Skype. Next to him is Tristan Harris, who runs a Center for Humane Technology, a brand new foundation in Washington, D.C., is that right?
In San Francisco.
San Francisco. He is a former employee of Google and has become an advocate of a variety of interesting views, which we'll hear a bit more about later. Next to him is Mitchell Baker. She's the chairwoman of Mozilla, which if you use an internet browser, I don't know how many people here use internet browsers, but if you do, Mozilla is one that should be, if not at the top, in their mix, because it's important to support, among other things, independent browsers. And Mozilla is independent.
And it's great. It's
Sorry?
great.
And
Firefox Quantum
yep.
can't be beat.
Okay, so everybody, Mozilla, baby. And then, actually, Firefox. I should say Firefox. What am I saying? And last but not least at all, Jimmy Wales, who did something once upon a time called Wikimedia, right? And so I guess, again, there's probably not a person in the room that hasn't benefited from his bit of technology. And he is still currently a chairman of the Wikimedia Foundation, right?
Yes.
Close enough.
Emeritus.
A peu près. Okay, so the purpose of this thing is to do two things. One is to talk a little bit about what happened yesterday over in the Élysée, because it was a closed door. There weren't any reporters. And then secondly, to kind of open it up into a broader discussion of the question of tech for good. So I'm going to just start by throwing out to everybody, what was the single best idea you heard at this event that you hadn't heard to death a million times already? Anybody who wants to jump in on that? I don't know. Jimmy, you got something?
I mean, I was in a session on education, and there were a lot of good ideas, but it was mainly things that we've all been talking about for years. The need for education to be aligned with people's actual needs in life, including working needs and so forth. The importance for companies and economies that people be properly trained for the future. Nothing earth-shattering.
The idea that sticks with me the most came from lunch, and it came from the president, and I thought he was very clear in saying technology, yes, disruption will occur, and the consequences of disruption must be attended to, including by business. And that's not a crazy statement, but in the context of the amount of business titans who were there, I think a very direct and clear discussion that yes, technology really brings us forward and you're entitled to run your businesses and to change and disrupt, and you are responsible for the consequences as well. You can't leave it to government or just walk away from it. And I thought it was good to hear that stated clearly and unapologetically.
Tristan?
Yep, I agree with Mitchell, but I think the thing that was a little bit disappointing is we've always talked about the good things that we want to do in the world. The jobs that we want to create, the personalized education we talked about over the weekend. The question is, what is it going to take to actually get there? What are the actual, concrete, specific commitments? And I think that's something I'd love to see more of.
Did anybody in that group say, oh yeah, here's how we're going to do it, like we're going to do this, or?
In the gender group, a lot of specific, I was in the gender group on gender diversity and other kinds of diversity group. And there was a lot of very specific ideas, but they didn't make their way into commitments. And so I'd love to see more commitment going forward.
Okay, Niklas?
Yeah. Well, I think I was also in the diversity group. I think one commitment that I think everyone did was everyone wanted to participate in improving the diversity in companies. And so maybe one good idea was that we talked about transparency about diversity. And if we can start measuring and being transparent about diversity, I think that's
In other
at least
words,
a good
better
start.
information about
Better
diversity.
information from all companies, and also from investors, and bring it out the facts.
So make it a part of the standard
Yeah.
accounting, if you like.
Yeah,
of
exactly. So I think that if that's something we can do, that's something.
Yeah, just one point I should have clarified at the beginning. They were divided up, the participants were divided into 3 groups, one of which talked about in informal roundtables diversity, a second group did education, and a third group did work. And I think we have people here from diversity and education, but nobody from work. So I guess so it goes. So you won't hear about that.
Actually, they're out of work.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
They're all at work. Okay. So anyway, now, okay, my other favorite one. So what was the absolutely most appalling idea that you heard, something that you cringed at when you heard it, and you pray will never happen as long as you're alive or the world? Anything like that come up? Or was this just a bunch of bland corporate people who had nothing to say, like that could set any hair on fire?
Yeah, I mean, it was much more of that. I didn't hear anything astonishing, good or bad.
Not good, nothing
A
terrible.
lot of good ideas.
So, I think it's always good to give constructive criticism rather than talking about bad ideas. I think one thing I reacted on, and this is something, it's a typical, happens a lot of times when we have these events, whether it's in Paris or other places in Europe, we talk about tech. They're inviting a lot of big CEOs from American tech companies. I was like, where are the European tech companies? We have some pretty awesome big tech companies. Why is not the CEO of Rocket, why isn't the Zalando, Spotify, ARM, Supercell, they're pretty big companies, they should be here.
Some of them were invited, actually.
Yeah, maybe they were focused on, they didn't need to lobby so much.
Some of them had other things to do. Tristan?
I don't have a specific bad one. I think it comes down to being really specific about, there was some good positive intentions, but I would love to see that landed in terms of specific concrete actions and commitments.
Yeah, we got pretty close to the question of whether there actually is a diversity problem in tech. And that was pretty shocking to me.
That it even was a question?
Yeah.
So in other words, it wasn't... So here we are in 2018 and a half, and it's sort of a problem, but it's lots of problems in the world. Okay. Well, look, that's enough about yesterday. We don't have to look backwards. I mean, I think, we've got 4 people here, all of whom have some thoughts, what I call hobby horses, things that they would like to see different about the world. And so let me just start. Tristan is the kind of professional hobby horse guy here, so let me let him start off, in very, a minute, what is to be done? What should we be doing about tech to make it a better, more positive thing in the world?
So this was actually the job that I had at Google. So I was a design ethicist at Google, which meant how do you ethically manipulate or steer 2 billion people's thoughts? How do you question whether the actual core impact of what you make every day, the product you make, is it actually good for people? And I think oftentimes tech for good comes down to, do we make great businesses and then we invest in some philanthropy on the side, like a sugar company, super profitable, amazingly profitable, huge, and then we fund some poverty initiatives on the side. How about we change what we make? And so what I think is the biggest underlying thing that needs to be fixed, and I think this is an elephant in the room, is social media's impact on 2 billion people's thoughts and beliefs. Because never before in history have you basically have 50 engineers who look like me, they're white, young engineers, 20 to 35 years old in San Francisco, who, when they design the algorithm or the machines of Facebook or YouTube or Twitter, the consequences will be that back in Myanmar, it'll amplify, say, fake news and create a genocide. Or it'll allow the Russians to hack 2 major elections. And those vulnerabilities are still very open and present, and I think that it's very easy to be seduced into kind of, let's just go to the next thing, but I think people have to realize that kind of World War III is happening in information space, and it's going to take a very serious conversation about reform to fix these platforms.
Let me jump to Jimmy on this because, I mean, Wikimedia is a global platform. It is a social thing. It's run by other. So you've been in this space that he just described in a fashion for long. What's changed? What compared to the? I mean, you've had your own wars and civil wars and.
I mean, for Wikipedia, very little has changed. I mean, we are still fundamentally a group of volunteers trying to do something that we enjoy and we like, and we hope other people like it. And our business model, so to speak, has never varied, which means we've avoided a lot of the problems and the traps that a lot of people have gotten into. So one of the things, of course, that's very much on people's minds today is what happens to all our data and who's actually getting access and what are they doing with our data to manipulate us. At Wikipedia, we have almost no data on anyone. I think we do a little bit more than we used to, but even a few years ago, we basically kept 0 access logs, and then for a while we were sampling 1 in 1,000 just to run some statistics and do it. Now we're doing a little bit more because there actually is value in looking at user behavior and understanding their path through the site and things like that for improving the site, customizing and things like that. But we shared 0 data with anyone. And so for us, we're quite, I don't know if we're old-fashioned or on trend for today, but at the same time, the environment that we exist in has changed substantially. You know, the idea that what I always talk about is everywhere I go on the internet, it doesn't matter what I'm doing or where I go, I see the same advertisements because I'm being tracked everywhere. And that's new. That's fairly new. I mean, we're all getting used to it because it's been a few years. But the ramifications, the implications of that are things that people like Tristan are just starting to help us raise awareness about. What does that really mean? Is it really the right answer?
Okay. Mitchell?
Well, you asked about hobby horses or what's on our mind or bugging us. I'm going to follow up to Tristan. You know, so at Mozilla, we've been talking about technology and its experience on people for probably 15 years, a decade or so, and in particular data for the last 10 years or so. And one of the things that I find is that, you know, the technology itself is exciting. I mean, I love technology too, and I love the network, and like just the technology is exciting, and the tendency to push aside anything else. You know, at Mozilla, we were cute, or we were a nonprofit, or whatever it was, but the questions about data, like the industry didn't listen. It's hard to get attention to an idea that's a little ahead of its time. And so one of the things, if I could really change it, would be this idea that if you care about something beyond, wow, you know, the tech is great, or what's the return each quarter to my shareholders, like you've kind of been written off so far. And I see that that's sort of starting to change now, and I would really hope that we could make big progress on that because, you know, I'd rather be wrong, you know, that we at Mozilla had been wrong for a decade and society was healthy, but like somehow technology and social impact and what happens to people has to get woven together.
What do you do with and about Firefox data? I mean, Firefox is a browser. Presumably you get lots of data. What do you do with it?
Well, we get less than you think. So we split data into 2 kinds. One, telemetry. Like, what is it that you actually need to know about your product? So I'll say it again, like Firefox as of last November is more than what you described. It's great. But the reason it wasn't great for a number of years is we spent a long time figuring out how can we collect telemetry to make a good product and not get your data. So we have that stuff. If you opt into news groups, we have some information, or to mailing lists. But we don't have a profile on you. In fact, we're now figuring out with Pocket how we can deliver personalized content to you that you like without having a profile on you at all.
I mean, are there lessons? Should Google be looking at you and saying, maybe this is a smarter, better way to do it?
Well, it depends what it is.
Okay.
Right. Like there's the Google business, on which I wouldn't presume to think, you know, I could offer anything that was more
well,
lucrative.
nobody's marching around complaining about you.
But in terms of how do you deliver personalized content, does it have to suck all your data into the cloud and they own it and we don't? Like, there is a lot of good work that could be done there. And I suspect if Google applied themselves there, they'd be doing it too. I mean, we're more inclined to do it. So I would say if you could step out of your core identity, there's plenty of work to be done. But I don't know how a big organization changes its identity. I think that's pretty tough.
Nicholas, I have a question. You're the VC here now. I mean, the classic Silicon Valley remedy to all problems is new investment, disruption. If you have a problem, you just go in there and...
You route around it.
Well, it's a version of I was going to say the route around it, but it's not quite, a little different. But you destroy it. You just come in and blow it up. If it's old and corrupt and messed up, you wreck it. As a VC, A, do you think that's realistic? And B, what kinds of companies do you think is there somebody out that's going to disrupt Facebook? Is there out there somebody that's going to disrupt Google? If somebody came to you and said, I've got a great idea to disrupt Facebook, would you take him seriously?
I would take the meeting.
But okay.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's so much about disrupting Facebook or Google. Usually these are two very, very well-run companies, are extremely competitive, and a lot of engineers and so much competitive advantage. So probably taking on them are like big missions, so may be hard to get funding for. But what drives me, what I'm interested in is really looking for founders who have a bigger mission than just building a great company. What we see today is that we're living in a world where with a lot of challenges. We talked about challenges within technology, but we have challenges on this planet outside of technology that previous technology caused, combustion engines and pollution. You know, we have a severe problem with climate, our oceans, biodiversity. We're starting to have a big shortage of water. These are substantial problems.
So these are the kind of issue, the tech for good. I mean,
so these are things. So on a positive side, so you can be completely kind of depressed about the state of the world. But then if you're an optimist and trying to find solutions, you're realizing, what I've been seeing lately, are founders coming to us pitching companies that actually are addressing some of these big problems. So Jimmy has this sustainability development goal thing on his jacket, the 17 goals. I like to think about each one of those 17 sustainability development goals.
Is that millennial goals? Is that what that is?
It's the successors to the Millennium Development Goals.
Okay.
So each one of those is like water shortage, climate, poverty.
Well, tell me two current startups that you guys are funding that you think fit this.
Yeah, so one is Lilium, which is vertical takeoff and landing electrical airplane from Berlin and Munich. So aviation is a big problem with causes a lot of emissions, and if you can have electrical airplanes, which you can have in a few years, that's going to contribute to that problem. You have congestion in cities because we're driving cars. If you can have basically flying electrical cars, it's going to reduce a lot of congestion.
Okay.
That's one thing. Other companies, the food chain is completely broken. Food is representing maybe 20% of...
Oh, you mentioned something about yesterday's event. What struck you as...
Yeah. So we had a lunch about tech for good, and we're eating meat. And we're talking about climate change, like we should eat less meat. But people continue to eat meat.
Was it good? I bet it was
very good. It's very good. Very nice environment. But then you need to find solutions to this. So what are the alternatives to meat? Of course, everyone's not going to become a vegetarian. So then you need to have, for example, meat replacement. So that's one type. So
have you got a meat replacement company you guys like?
Yes, Memphis Meats.
Memphis Meats.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the yellow bikes that you see outside, OFO. So bike sharing, if you can ride bicycles instead of taking cars, it's another good thing. Farm Drop, which is a way to get local farm products delivered to home. So there are a lot of those companies we see that are On Truck, which is a company in Spain that are making trucking more efficient. So there's a bunch of those companies, and I have a strong belief that companies that are actually at the core of their business model are addressing some of these big problems are going to be some of the better companies in the future. They're going to have a better ability to hire the best people, and customers want to buy products and services from companies which are sustainable.
Let's flip things around a little bit. Tech for bad, I'll call it. You know, we used to have the boogeymen in our lifetimes have been atomic energy first, although it was not initially a boogeyman, it was kind of okay. Then the internal combustion engine ruining the planet, all this petroleum. Now we've added arguably AI. You know, for the last 4 or 5 years, a lot of very smart people, including Elon Musk and others, have been yelling that AI is going to do us all in. Now, obviously, we've added in the last year, social media has been added to the potential tech for bad things. Is that, I mean, do you guys worry about that? I mean, you know, we've all grown up in a time when tech, it was taken for granted, tech was going to make everybody's life better, and it has, by the way, you know, taken on a global basis. Unquestionably, billions of people have been lifted from abject poverty into cell phone land, for whatever that's worth, so they can get on Facebook. And that's probably a net good, but should we really start putting AI in the same category that we put internal combustion engines and social media? I mean, I'll let Tristan go again, because I think I know the answer.
Well, I think the history of technology is we get infatuated with really positive sounding ideas. Like, you know, Twitter's was, let's create a platform for free speech. We're the platform for free speech. Let's give everybody a voice. And they would have never known that they just gave a bunch of automated bot voices because no one was checking. Or let's make the world more open and connected, right? And without checking which accounts are getting registered or who's putting the ads into the system, that can lead to entire elections going a different way, and that can lead to geopolitical outcomes. Or, for example, with personalization. YouTube could say, hey, wouldn't it be great if we personalize the videos that we serve to you next so that we have the perfect next video? But in doing that, it turns out that basically because of the attention economy, there's only so much attention. When YouTube is trying to figure out what's the perfect next video to show you, it's been proven, a former YouTube engineer who works with us shows that YouTube has a bias towards divisive and sort of conspiracy theory content. So if you airdrop a person into a regular video about 9/11, for example, the terrorist attack, 2 videos later, it's showing you 9/11 conspiracy theory videos. If you airdrop a human being and they land into YouTube watching about the moon landing, 2 videos later, you're watching the conspiracy theories that there was no moon landing. Even personalization examples like Twitter, where you follow 2 accounts and now it wants to personalize, here's some more accounts, people like this you might want to follow. So now you follow one user that's, say, an ISIS terrorist on Twitter, and Twitter says, here's all these more ISIS terrorists you can follow. And these are not hypothetical examples. I work with the people who, on the Russia investigation, followed a lot of these kinds of things. And if on Facebook, if you follow one conspiracy theory group like Pizzagate, their recommendation engine of personalizing things would recommend all sorts of other conspiracy theory groups. So you just have to follow Pizzagate, and it'll offer you chemtrails and flat Earth and a bunch of other conspiracies. And so we're kind of ruining the epistemic environment of what we're thinking and believing, all based on what we thought was a really good idea about how do we personalize things for people. And so I think we're in this kind of period of reckoning. It's not that all tech is bad, it's just that we have to get really humble about whether our goals, as they sound really seductive and positive, are they actually as good as we think they are? And can we see the structural problems with where they've gone truly wrong?
How about, I mean, regulatory? We just had Matt Hancock from the UK here. Lots of governments are circling this thing like, what are we going to do? Do you guys either expect to see regulation coming in this area? And what would do you have any particular recommendations of what should be done?
Well, I mean, I definitely expect to see at least some countries moving towards regulation, but I also regard that with a great deal of alarm. You know, one of the things people talk about sometimes to deal with the problem of fake news, should governments ban it? And I can tell you, the Chinese government and the Turkish government and others around the world will definitely be more than happy to go down the path of banning news they don't agree with. You know, Donald Trump calls the New York Times fake news. I don't think anybody thinks he should be able to ban New York Times. And so regulation can be super clumsy That doesn't mean there's not a role somewhere in here, particularly when we move into areas that are, borderline fraud and things like that. But it's a very tricky area, and I think it's as important, or perhaps more important, that the platforms like Facebook take the problem very, very seriously. One of the things I've been saying is I would love it on Facebook. Like, I've felt the filter bubble problem around Brexit, for example. I live in London. All my friends are of a certain, sort of category of people in London, and I didn't know a single person who was in favor of Brexit. And I didn't see any news in my news feed in favor of Brexit. And so I literally thought before the day of the election, I don't really know why everybody's talking about this. Obviously, it's not going to pass. Nobody's supporting this. I was wrong, but that was because I was in a filter bubble. I would love it if I could tick up, if Facebook said to me one morning, we'd like to show you some news in your news feed that we don't think you're going to like, but we have some signals that it's of quality. Oh, that sounds interesting, right? I want to be challenged with things that I disagree with that are of quality, rather than being fed the same good stuff that all my friends like and that I like, because now I'm not really being educated.
Niklas?
Yes, so what's happening is that technology is getting more and more powerful and has bigger and bigger impact, as we discussed. And all of us have been growing up with technology when it wasn't that impactful, and we had our little things, and we were startups, or these companies we're talking about, they were startups, and all of those startups, they had good intentions. And there's this kind of a reinforcement that, yes, what we're doing is the right thing. And now there's these companies, the big companies, they're big machines. And also kind of, so it's really hard to shift course. And it's also hard, the machine is also lawyers and lobbyists, and as the minute they started to say, no, we're going to take responsibility what's on our platform, it's going to have a lot of different problems. But we are at this point where all of us who are in technology need to kind of take a step back and step up and take responsibility and talk about these things, and saying we in our industry have responsibilities for the future, because if we don't, we will have regulation. There's no doubt about it, and the regulators are not going to be able to put in the right regulation. As Jimmy says, it's so complex. It's so complex. So I think I'm certain that it's in the best interest for all of us, for technology companies, for the big companies, and for the startups, and for the users, that we start taking responsibility and doing kind of proactive actions to deal with this, instead of just kind of sending lobbyists and party lines. Because it's also with these regulations that we're probably going to see, it's very likely that's going to be very, very hard for startups, which is not intended. So I think we need to start talking about what are kind of the level of ethics that we have in these companies. And when I talk to founders of startups, this is one of the first questions I ask them. What do they think about? What's the culture of ethics and values that they have? So that I know that the founders I'm investing in have strong foundational values.
Is that something you did 5 years ago?
No, we did not. This is something that we kind of started because we kind of thought it was obvious, but now we realize that this is so important, and it's actually something that they're responding to very positively. The same thing as about diversity. You need to have those discussions from the beginning.
Tristan looks eager to jump in.
Yeah. So in terms of regulation, I think Mark Andreessen, who was CEO of Netscape, said in 2008, software is eating the world. What he meant by that is that software can do way more efficiently every other industry than it existing today. So Uber can eat taxis. It can eat that by making it more efficient. But then what you've done is you've just deregulated taxis. Facebook can eat advertising, but then you just deregulated all the election laws we used to have around advertising. So software is eating the world becomes deregulation is eating the world. So in other words, we're actually deregulating. We're actually at a lower regulation point, because as technology becomes the principal surface area of people's beliefs, their choices, their children, all those areas we used to have protections in place on, say, TV. In the United States, it used to be there is a law that says it should cost the same price for a TV ad for each candidate for the same TV slot. On Facebook, there was no such law,
right.
And so there was actually a 17-to-1 difference for one candidate versus another in the pricing. So The challenge we have is that we at least need to recapitulate or bring back the protections that actually did make sense, that the ones that we were protecting us from a whole bunch of non-equal playing field actors. And then we have a new set of problems that are brought about by the exponential consequences that are brand new. And I think the challenge that Jimmy and Niklas are bringing up is how do you regulate exponential technologies? As a friend and mentor of mine used to say, exponential technologies means you push a button and there's exponentially complex impact. You know, a nuclear bomb was different because it was a bomb that had exponential impact. And so what do you do with exponential technologies? We have the power of gods without the wisdom, prudence, and love of gods.
I don't want to beat up on social media all day because my favorite, the AI boogeyman, probably if you did a word count at this event today, AI probably would hit the #1 spot, and I can guarantee that 99.95 of the usages were positive, and that you probably get 50 AI pitches a day, and AI is just AI, and yet you go to other people who are actually smart people, and they go, AI is an existential threat to the planet, that's going to make all this stuff look like a picnic, and you're not even going to remember you were talking about fake news. And I know none of you are AI scientists, neither am I. That's one of the problems of AI, is that there's a kind of a priesthood about it, and if you don't know it, you're not allowed to have opinions about it. But anyway, I'm going to give you guys the benefit of the doubt and let you have opinions. Should we be worried about AI? Should we be thinking about AI the same way we're thinking about social media right now?
Well, AI is power. There's no question it's power. Power, right? Just like, I mean, you know, when you have something that's powerful, it will be powerful across the entire expression of humanity. It will be powerful in the great things it can do, and it will be powerful in how degraded and terrible we can be to each other and to the planet. So, sure. I mean, AI is an immensely powerful piece of technology that's coming out of, you know, the developments of the last 25 years. And so we're going to see both. I mean, we're going to see AI in the use of new ways of doing medicine and saving people's lives, you know, whatever your cause is. And we're going to see AI used by people for really horrific purposes. Like, so it's not, I mean, the same thing is true of internal combustion engines. The same thing is true of any powerful technology. If you think, I mean, we use explosives for plenty of good purposes too, and we kill people with them. So maybe you're asking, is it fundamentally different in the question of, is it going to take over humanity themselves? Which is a question that the billionaires are pretty interested in, and I think is a ways away from the lives for most of us.
Okay.
Well, I think AI is a great example of exponential tech, right? Because you have something that has an exponential amount of power. And when you have win-lose game theory, where I win when you lose, times exponential power, you get omni-lose-lose. It's just like with nuclear weapons. You can't actually use them because then it becomes omni-lose-lose. Everyone loses if you actually deploy exponential power. And the problem is that you want to get there first, and so we're racing as fast as possible to the things we probably should be going as slow as possible to create. In the same way that with nuclear weapons, we went as fast, we went very fast, and then we needed, after we blew it up, Robert Oppenheimer said, "I have created death, the destroyer of all things." And there was this whole conversation where the Union of Concerned Scientists came up and said, how do we actually protect this technology from being used in bad ways? But we did that after the first atomic bomb. I think the challenge with this is AI is a whole different new species of exponential technology that if we use it once, we actually don't know the kinds of things that can happen. And I think there's another hidden thing, which is that we already have exponential AI. It's just pointed at our brains every single day. Because every single time you use a news feed, or YouTube, or Twitter, you're actually engaging with a supercomputer inside of Google or Facebook pointed at your brain that's playing chess against your mind. And if you think, like, you've ever had the experience of you land on YouTube and you think, this time I'm going to watch this one video, and I know those other times I wake up 2 hours later and I watch more, but this time I'm just going to watch one. And then you wake up and 2 hours later you're like, what the hell happened? It's because YouTube was playing chess against your mind, and it could see way more moves ahead on the chessboard than you could see. And so it knew that this was the perfect video to autoplay next. And so we've already pointed AIs at our brains, and with deepfakes, which are the fake videos and fake audio, you can make Obama or Vladimir Putin look like they're saying anything. We're also pointing AIs at our brains. So in other words, we're eroding the authority of the one instrument we have to live in the world. And I think this is an invisible problem like climate change, where no one can see it because you're inside the mind that is being influenced. So it's like being a monkey and being educated about what a banana is. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, there's still a banana in front of you, and too many millions of years of evolution make you want the banana.
I think we should be worried about AI, and as I said, it's already kind of happening in some extent. But I also think that the companies you're talking about, they're rational actors that we can have dialogue with, and where the founders have good intent. So I think that's something like there are these discussions, and hopefully they will kind of course correct. As we are in this exponential growth of AI and the implications, and then you put this in the hands of bad actors, actually we have bad intent. And you combine that with other kind of technologies such as CRISPR and other things, there's a lot of bad things that can happen with AI for people who really want to have bad intentions. So we should be worried about it, but we need to have these serious discussions about what are the level of ethics. But unfortunately, the bad actors probably not going to show up to those meetings.
Anybody expect to see a turn it off movement? I mean, there are movements against internal combustion, climate change, lots of things have already sparked. I'm still not seeing a turn off Facebook or turn off anything movement of any consequence of any kind. In fact, the statistics would show it's not even a blip.
Yeah. Well, someone actually who's very close to Uber told me that the delete Uber movement didn't actually make a lot of people really delete Uber or use it less, but it changed the culture surrounding Uber and forced a major change in the management and major change in the way that they do business. With Dara, who was actually at this briefing yesterday with Macron. I think the delete Facebook movement is not going to cause people to delete Facebook, but it did change culture. And I think that there was a HarrisX poll about a few weeks ago saying 67% of Americans actually want to regulate social media. And so these are highly addictive products. They're designed kind of like cigarettes by using lots of design techniques that are very powerful and persuasive. And I don't expect that we're going to unplug completely. What we need is better design so we're not sitting in a world every day that's trying to hijack our attention and our minds. And we need to have, the AI community is obsessed with value alignment. How do you make sure that the AI's goals are aligned with human goals? When you point AIs at our brains, we need the AI aligned with human agency, with human freedom. People talk about worker automation. We're talking about automating almost like human spiritual automation. We're actually hollowing out human beings and replacing them with goals which are click on the next thing. Because you have a bunch of supercomputers pointed at 2 billion people's brains every day, but there's about 2 billion people use Facebook. It's about the number of followers of Christianity. And 1.8 billion use YouTube, which is about the number of followers of Islam. And I think people really misunderestimate how powerful this system is and how much needs to change structurally, not just in small areas.
And on that point, one of the things I know we're getting close to our time and Mark's coming out next. One of the things that's really interesting about Facebook as a company is that Mark has a really unprecedented level of power as CEO. So a lot of companies end up going down a really bad path because they're sort of forced to by being slaves to quarterly numbers. And they know that maybe they're doing decisions that don't make sense for society nor for the company in the long run, but the CEO doesn't dare step out of that because they will lose their job.
Should I introduce Mark?
You're going to join us. But in the case of Facebook, Mark literally can make these decisions, and to the short-term detriment of the company, he can say, we're not going to make money in this way anymore, and the stock's going to take a big hit. He can't be fired. He can still carry on.
Mark's the one guy that could do it.
Will he have the courage to do it?
We can ask him.
Here he comes.
Okay, I'm going to do we have 1 minute left, one really mean trick. Okay, I'm going to define long-term as 10 years out. Are you long-term optimistic about the state of the world and humanity, or long-term pessimistic? 10 years. Go.
I'm always a pathological optimist. I think
Okay.
everything's going to be great
Fine
always.
answer.
So
Mitchell?
it's going to be great.
I'm an optimist too.
Silicon Valley people always are optimistic. How about now? You actually live there? What?
No, I think Silicon Valley is filled with optimists. What scares me is, can we be optimistic but from an utter place of humility? Can we look honestly at how deeply the systems that we are living inside of are flawed, and how much change needs to happen? From that deep place of humility, I'm an optimist, but only when we recognize the problems that we face from a true place.
Nicholas?
I'm also an optimist, but I'm also know that we need to step up and deal with a lot of big challenges that we have and really take action, because otherwise we have a big problem.
On that cheerful note, I'm going to have to send you guys on your way, but thank you very much. This, I think, has been a really great, valuable. Let's have a hand. Thank you.